Hello, Internet. Gino, that Pinguino Grieco here again with another episode of Deep Listens. I am joined, as always, by Billy Go Fuck Yourselfy Rothert.
You know, I don't frequently take selfies. So when I start playing a game where selfies are examined in more of an academic context, I'm way out of my element. So this is going to be an enlightening and very, very different experience for me talking about a game where selfies actually play a pretty pivotal role.
And we are joined, as also always, by soon-to-be PhD, hopefully, as long as he doesn't screw this up, Pete. I want to be my selfie, Busby.
Podcast is just going to be ripe with selfie puns. I take it. I see Gino has a list in the background. If you can't see it, listeners, it is miles long. I'd just like to point out, too, that Billy is a filthy liar. He's Snapchatting me selfies on the reg. So if you haven't checked out his Instagram, make sure you do so now.
Pete, those are for your eyes only.
They are very intimate selfies. Thanks for tuning in yet again, everybody. I promise there will be no more talk about the lewd pictures Billy's been sending me on Snapchat.
Look, Billy, there's no reason to be selfie conscious.
You can see him crossing them off as he goes, too. He's working all the way down the list.
I'm out, guys.
And to discuss Life is Strange, that other voice you hear is my sister, Noelle the Otter Grieco.
What? I was expecting a selfie pun, and I'm a little upset that I didn't get one.
I'm sorry, you didn't get a selfie pun because I just liked that the team in Life is Strange is the Otters. I thought
Go
that was
Otters.
a really good name. Go Otters.
Let's go Durs.
What?
Yeah, the swim team's the Otters.
Oh, the swim team. Because all the other ones are Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like the swim
why
team way
is it
better.
just the swim team? That's a good point.
Otters swim and Bigfoots clearly don't. That's
Big
a
feet.
known fact.
Big feet would be the plural.
Sorry.
Foots.
I'm sorry. Well, this show's gone off the rails real quick.
Sorry, guys.
In case you didn't know, we were discussing Life is Strange this week. And if you want to get in touch with the show, at Deep Listens Pod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have comment sections, and at Deep Listens Podcast. Wait, no, Deep Listens Podcast at gmail.com.
There you go. That's how email works.
That's how email works. The at goes after. I guess you could have an at in the first part, but that's.
Could you?
I think so, but you'd probably screw up some sites real bad by doing that.
I don't think you're allowed to have symbols.
Oh, no.
Nothing happened.
Nothing happened. We're good.
We're golden.
So, to start off our discussion of Life is Strange, Billy, set the mood.
All right, so the general setting of this is in a fictional city, or a fictional town of Arcadia Bay in present-day Oregon. We follow the story of Maxine Caulfield, who is a 12th grade student at Blackwell Academy. There's a very specific time frame of the story. It's like the first or second week of October, but there's like a very specific 5-day school week that this entire story takes place in. You start on Monday, episode 1, Monday. There's actually a different title for the specific episodes, but it's effectively Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So there's 5 episodes in the game, 5 days in this school week that you play out. At the very beginning of this story, Max has a vision of a horrible, horrible storm that produces a massive tornado that she sees while she sort of walks up towards a lighthouse in the wilderness during this storm, and she can see off the coast a massive tornado about to just destroy Arcadia Bay. She then wakes up to find out that she now has these weird, essentially time control powers. And we sort of set off the very first moments of the game, playing around with how we can make small decisions in sort of a tutorial level mode, and how we can rewind them and make things happen the way that we think that they should happen. So that's the general general intro to Life is Strange.
Yeah, and most of the game's primary gameplay is exploring these different dialogue trees and then rewinding and replaying time, and then kind of exploring the limits of your time travel power.
And, just growing up as a teenage girl in Oregon, that's the real adventure.
That is the realest adventure, being a teenage girl, and that is partially why Noelle's on the show, but also because you have some expertise in some
time
elements
travel.
of yes.
Yes. Guys, it's real. I've done did it. Just kidding, I didn't. Don't get your hopes up.
Done do it.
Yeah, because she has some expertise in psychology studies and topics like that. And this game, it has multiple trigger warnings like as soon as the game starts, and for good reason. So we will discuss some heavy stuff. We are in this episode only covering chapters 1 and 2 of Life is Strange because it's a pretty dang dense game, and the first 2 chapters have more than enough discussion, more than enough events to go over. We will cover episodes 3 through 5 next week. So, to start off, go ahead.
So can I give like a trigger warning, even though it's I know I was asking you first. Just a warning: if you are triggered by conversations about suicide, please turn off this podcast now. Just a warning. Okay, bye.
Yep, we will definitely discuss suicide and depression.
And
extreme.
potentially sexual assault.
Yes, also that.
Bullying.
So if any of these are triggers for
Pretty
you,
much run
please
down
turn
the
this
list.
off.
Yeah.
So I guess
Gun
Listen
violence.
to the other ones.
I guess a good place to start then, outside of the gameplay, is, since we've made this mention, the game actually has on one of the loading screens a warning. On top of just the trigger warnings, it has a kind of reference page on the game's website for helplines in basically all the territories that the game released in, which I thought was really cool. It's something I've never seen a game do before, and it's not inside the game. They just have the URL for the, I think it's lifeisstrange.com/talk or something like that, or lifeisstrangegame/talk. But they had helplines, suicide helplines for the USA, Canada, all over Europe. It was pretty impressive to see a game company take that stuff to heart and really, if you're going to explore topics that are that kind of serious and impactful, it's nice to see them do the work to say, hey, we're going to discuss this, it's going to be hard, we're not going to pull any punches, and there's nothing wrong with needing help when discussing stuff like this.
Also, it shows just how much they understand about the topics that they're talking about, because in pretty much all psychology research, you do have to give those kind of warnings, and you do have to provide that information afterwards if you are doing anything that references mortality or anything to that respect. Sorry. But yeah, so it really shows their understanding of the topics and the subject matter that they are exploring, which is refreshing for someone tackling mental illness.
Yeah, when you did some research, you had to show people who were doing your research a picture of a duck to get them into a good mood if they were in a bad place after the research, right?
Yeah, and my current research, I have to provide suicide hotline numbers because there's a mortality salience aspect of my current research.
Yeah, so I thought it was that really jumped out at me because I've never seen that before. And I've played a lot of games that have at least made glances towards this kind of subject matter, but I've never seen a game try to be as responsible about it.
It'd be nice to see it in sort of, if we're just, let me toss out a public service message. It would be nice to see it in a wider diversity of games too, just to sort of, I feel like there would be significant backlash, reprehensibly so, if you included something like this in like Halo 5. Just at the beginning, like, hey, whether Halo 5 or not is going to trigger anything, let's just here's some resources you could look at if this was one of your issues.
Yeah, and I think that it just comes hand in hand with, like, a lot of these games that motion towards violence or reproduction of warfare. There's also this kind of implied, but really this is for fun.
Yeah.
It's not that dangerous. Like, even for Call of Duty games that are trying to be more realistic, at least earlier on. I don't know if the more recent Call of Duties have gotten a little bit more, if this triggers your PTSD, like, here's some help for you. But at least early on, there was kind of this implied, all this gunplay, all this violence is ultimately for fun and not to be taken seriously. And so maybe they thought that it wasn't necessary to provide warnings or help material. But this game was very conscientious about knowing what they were invoking and knowing that the emotions that they were trying to dredge up could be severe for some players. And I know that I was personally affected at least once. Well, we won't discuss it in this episode, but we will probably next week.
Mm-hmm.
So
Definitely.
Let's start moving towards the gameplay. There's not a lot to discuss here. It's mostly just kind of exploring dialogue trees.
I do want to hit on a couple of mechanical points.
Yeah, like BioWare. Telltale games, BioWare games, those sorts of dialogue trees.
I do want to hit a couple mechanical points.
Yep.
The first thing that I do with any game that I play, almost invariably, is before I start the game, I will go to options and see what options there are. I don't know if you all saw the subtitle options, but there are three. There are three subtitle options. There is normal, there is large, and there is hella large.
Did it actually say hella large?
Yes. Normal, large, hella large.
I think I used normal. I used normal. I don't think I engaged hella large. How large is hella large?
It's not that bad.
Kind of stupid.
It is hella large for subtitles, but I would say even the large version would be pretty reasonable. I was playing on a monitor and not like on a TV, so normal was fine for me, but people that are maybe playing in a group, that like games like these are fantastic to play with a group of people. They're great to play by yourself as sort of a, cuddle up and play like a game novel thing, but this is also great to play with a big group of people. And so having big subtitles is nice.
Yeah, and
other things that
also,
I wanted to
just for like accessibility for people who don't necessarily have great vision, having variable size. I know that some of the people I play with, or some of my friends, have pretty bad eyesight, and there are some games that just the subtitles are so poor that they just can't read them. And if you can't adjust the size, you're basically locked out of using subtitles at all. I know that I think it was Borderlands on the console. Its menus were just had a terrible font size, and you just couldn't read them if you had bad eyesight.
So, something that is a little bit different than other Telltale style games. This is not a Telltale game, but one thing that is a little bit different from this particular style of game is the perspective of the character. In all the Telltale games that I've played, there is no necessarily first person, and this game is sort of over the shoulder, so it's not first person either. I wish we would have been able to have a first person option for Life is Strange. I feel like, as in opposition to some of the other styles of games that we've played that are similar to this, first person would have been really good here. I think it could have had a lot of weight behind a first person option.
But this is a game, especially at the beginning and especially more so sort of as it progresses, where the actual physical embodiment of the character is so important. So I get sort of what first person would give you, sort of maybe a more immersive experience. But I think it also sort of paradoxically, maybe not paradoxically, but as a result, it lessens that sort of identification with the actual embodied reality of Max's existence. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I do feel like that her physical presence on screen puts in some work in and of itself. And whenever I'm given the option to choose between first person and sort of an over the shoulder look, I prefer this perspective. I actually prefer the perspective that the game is currently set in. I just feel like that maybe an opportunity could have been missed to give players a choice. Kind of like Hella Large is a choice that I'm glad that I had. Maybe some players would have really appreciated a first person perspective for a game like this.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting approach that hopefully a game will take down the line. I don't know if this is the one, just because a lot of character development is done through Max's character. Like Pete said, through her character model, moments where her clothing changes, where her facial expressions are really key with the kind of counter shot setup with a lot of the dialogue sequences.
Mm-hmm.
You would miss out if you were just seeing someone straight on. But I think that there is definitely room for a game in this vein to be designed with a first person camera in mind fully.
Like we think about some games that are dialogue heavy but also have strong first person components, like Skyrim games or like Dragon Age games where you can be the sort of first person character and you just see a person talk at you. I think those games lose something by really, like, your body isn't really present, and also those dialogues are way more one-sided. Now, it would be kind of weird if there was like a disembodied voice representing you as Max, because if there's going to be voice acting, you kind of have to have it put into the character. So I get why it might be weird to do here, but I hope that we can get to a point where we can have a nice first-person perspective, where you feel like there's actually this really cool two-person dialogue. I don't know how it would work.
Yeah, I think like a good example would be maybe Firewatch, except the other side is always on a walkie-talkie, unfortunately. But that's sort of, I think that there's certainly room for that, and there are some games that are ultimately like shooters and stuff where there will be moments of first-person dialogue. Like I think the most recent Wolfenstein game, the one that came out a couple years ago, has some first-person dialogue where you are. What is the main character of Wolfenstein? It's a real crazy name. That game was actually remarkably serious, but I think there are some first-person dialogue scenes. BJ Blazkowicz, that's his name. BJ Blazkowicz.
Firewatch is an illustrative example, though, because I think the problem here is, like, if you think about Firewatch, your character was basically, if I'm remembering correctly, a middle-aged white man who sort of operates within a position of anonymity already. Like, if you're white and middle-aged, that fact socially goes unremarked upon. Whereas, like, if you're a teenage girl, you exist differently in a social context just in virtue of that fact.
Yeah, and if you, and especially in this game where self-consciousness is one of the major themes,
exactly.
I think you kind of bring it out. Though I think Firewatch did a good job of, just by making the main character's hands present, they managed to get a lot of work. They managed to do a lot of work that way. Just kind of seeing the changes of his ring finger. You know, does he have the ring? Does he not? Like, what is present in his house kind of substitutes for what he's wearing. Like, Max's room doesn't necessarily change all that. It changes a little bit throughout episodes 1 and 2, but it doesn't change all that much because her clothes eventually start changing and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's a good point, Billy. I think there's definitely a room for this kind of perspective change in dialogue heavy games like this. And
so sorry, go ahead, Noelle.
Oh no, it's fine. I wonder what would happen if, rather than addressing the fact that she is a teenage girl, it was just left more ambiguous. Because Max is a gender ambiguous name. And if they had a gender-ambiguous voice, I wonder if it would have a different approach as a first person.
Because
there's nothing really indicating her that she's a female aside from, obviously, her body and her voice. But otherwise, she could be more gender-ambiguous, I feel like.
Well, I agree with that point, but I should say not agree. I sympathize with that point, but I'm also really happy that this game just like shattered the Bechdel test like instantly.
Shattered the what?
The Bechdel test is you're familiar with it. Yeah. So Pete, do you want to mention it just for our listeners if they are not familiar?
It's named after a graphic novelist I forget her first name. Does anyone remember?
No.
Okay. Well, it's named after a graphic novelist, Alison Bechdel. She first sort of rose to prominence. I'm fairly sure this test actually came up in a issue of her webcomic. It was called Dykes to Look Out For. Very good if you ever want to look up sort of a good webcomic. But
Dykes to watch out for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The idea of the test is sort of a test of whether or not a movie is, you could say feminist, but that's sort of a reductive term to use in this case. But the idea is if two characters are on screen, two female characters on screen, and they're having a conversation about something other than a man, that film or piece of media, I guess you could say, passes the Bechdel test.
Yeah, and the test is not meant as, like you said, it's not like if you pass the test, you are immediately feminist. It is like the ground floor, the bare minimum you could do if you wanted somewhat equal representation of men and women.
So the one they mentioned in the comic was Aliens. That one passed the Bechdel test.
But most movies, any given year, fail.
There's been a movement sort of shifting from it recently. Because Pacific Rim, I remember when it came up, was held up for sort of having a female protagonist whose personal story was central to the narrative, but it wouldn't have passed the Bechdel test itself.
Yep. But this game shatters it almost immediately, multiple times.
Also, just to clarify, I'm not saying that it should not be a female or that it should be gender ambiguous. I'm just saying it could be an interesting, different take on the game.
Absolutely.
Just making that known.
I think narratively, things would have to change were that the case. But, you know, I'm sure we'll hit those at some point.
Sure. And
I have one last mechanical thing that I wanted to talk about, because I think we should leave all the mechanical stuff behind after, and just jump into the good meaty stuff. Did you guys play with subtitles on, or did you just listen to dialogue?
Played with them on.
Played with them on.
Did you guys ever run into a slight issue where an environmental thing would occur that was some kind of like time-sensitive environmental, and subtitles would show up on the screen, but maybe you didn't catch it in time, and you interacted with like a interactable, and that text got sort of deleted or overwritten?
Yeah, but not that frequently.
Yeah, not enough that I recall it.
I recall it, and maybe I'm just being a stickler, but I think it would be really easy to avoid that. So I want maybe there to be some kind of, I don't know. It bugged me the way that when you interact with an object, the rest of the world in many cases goes on around you still. And I know that maybe is adding to some of the realism of what you're doing. Like if you're examining like a squirrel on a park bench and you take a picture, life doesn't stop around you. And in some cases you can rewind and hear that same dialogue point in the environment.
Good thing she has time rewinding powers.
Yeah.
She's got that time rewinding potion.
Very convenient.
But that was just like a very minor, sort of like a design point that struck me as, I feel like that could have been easy to get around.
Well, I mean, you kind of already articulated why it's an issue. When you click on an object, it takes focus, and the world does not stop when you are examining objects. And if you wanted the world to stop as soon as you click on an object, that would be a very different style of game. It wouldn't be a very different style of game, but it would be a very conscious decision that Max is the center of everything, and the world moves on when she's done. Which I think, for the type of atmosphere and story that Life is Strange is trying to tell, I think it's actually kind of important that the game keeps moving regardless of Max, and she kind of assumes control of the world when she uses her power, rather than the world necessarily looking out for her. It's kind of an active, no, I want to hear what that discussion was, even though the world ordinarily wouldn't play by these rules. It's kind of her violating space-time to have everything, to know all of the correct things to say, to listen to what everyone has to say, to be able to kind of move around at will.
I think it's a point well made. Yeah.
All right. So I guess we will move on to just a little bit with the time travel. One thing that's worth mentioning is this game, there are regular dialogues that you can have with just other students. and you'll kind of be able to suss out different conversation topics that you might not have known the first time you talk to someone. Like maybe you talk to a student who doesn't like you. You're like, why the heck don't you like me? And she's like, well, you don't actually understand me and my problems with my mom. And then you rewind and you go, how's your mom doing? And all of a sudden, like, the dialogue opens up because you knew what to talk about.
Instant friendship.
Yes, instant friendship. And those are conversations that happen all the time. There's kind of a mechanic of slowly accruing friends throughout Blackwell. And then there are kind of these big story beats that are mainline that will kind of culminate in a single moment of generally binary choice. And each of those binary choices, because you can time travel, the way Max's time travel powers work, you can kind of rewind a certain amount of time. And usually there will also be kind of points on this rewind wheel that you can rewind to, like, you know, the last conversation choice you made or the last person you talked to, that you can just fast forward, rewind directly back to that. And so when you get to one of those binary choices, generally speaking, after those choices, you get a chance to rewind, see what the other option would have done, and kind of rewind again and make your real choice. That's generally how I approached most of those moments, just to see what the two timelines look like and see which one I was more comfortable with.
I did that for just about every single thing you could possibly do in this game. That's why it took me, 12 hours to get just halfway through. So another thing that I want to mention is that similarly to how the game will alert you when there is a new dialogue option with a person that you just finished a conversation with, then that conversation maybe did not go very well. It'll say, hey, you learned something new about that conversation that you could have rewind it and tried again with that new information. Likewise, it tells you exactly when you have made an action that has consequences in the timeline. So in some other games, they don't necessarily do that. They just say things happen. And actually, in the Telltale games, you make a conversation point, and it'll say, like, so-and-so will remember that you said that.
Clementine will remember.
You lied to Clementine. She knew you lied to her. And then you feel bad about her or something like that. But here they give you something very, very similar. Like, you water your plant in the dorm.
The plant will remember.
The plant will remember.
The plant will remember.
Plants are fantastic, yes.
So I like knowing when something that I do is just for depth of environment. Like if I just go examine a poster on the wall and just get a little piece of development of the world that I'm in, that's not going to have consequences. Great, I love that too.
Yeah, I do like how transparent the game was with those mechanical hooks. And I guess one other thing to mention is with the time travel power, there's a little bit of quirk. Like if you get an object, it stays with you regardless of whether you rewind or not. So if you acquire a phone, that phone is yours now, regardless of whether you rewind before you kind of convince someone to give you their phone or something. Or if you rewind and move and then rewind, you do not move back to where you were before.
God.
So you can kind of teleport around by, moving and then rewinding and then continuing to move. And so the scene will kind of pick up from where your rewind was, even though you've advanced in physical space, which kind of lets you do some quirky stuff later on in the game, which is cool. So we are Maxine Caulfield. We are in Blackwell Academy in a prestigious photography program. Max is way into retro photography, retro cameras, those old Polaroids.
And you shouldn't shake those. It can damage the photo.
Are you telling me that Andre
Outcast
3000?
lied to you. That's exactly what I'm saying. He looked you in the eye and he lied to you.
Possum
Exactly.
Jenkins wouldn't lie to me.
He did.
No.
Okay, fine. But
Heartbroken.
Max does shake the Polaroid every time she takes one, so she doesn't care.
She doesn't.
That's why she's failing out of her class. Every time she shakes it, Mark Jefferson is just like, "What are you doing? I thought you cared about your craft."
I thought you had a vision.
So the game starts in this dude, Mark Jefferson's photography class. Do you discover your power immediately, or do you just have that first conversation?
You do not discover it immediately.
Pretty much. Well,
you have to make the first choice, basically.
Yeah, it's pretty much immediately.
I mean, it depends how long it takes you to like go through her journal and all of her other stuff.
Yeah.
It took me a while because I'm a slow reader, but that's just me.
But you discover it. You discover it before you go to the bathroom.
No.
Yeah, because you answer that question.
What?
No, you discover it before that, don't you?
No, you discover it in the bathroom, but you have the vision that you're confused about before. Like, literally the first thing you do.
Okay.
You have no time control until you watch the first thing you can change with time control. Yeah. Or not the first thing, but the event that triggers your time control.
Yeah.
Yes. And so you're kind of in class. They do a really good job of using stereotypes, like stereotypical characters, to just kind of get you up to speed real quickly. Like Victoria, you immediately hate Victoria. She's pretty terrible. Mark Jefferson, the frickin' hipster teacher with his flip.
Yeah, the young cool guy teacher.
Hey everyone, I'm just here to teach you about photography.
He's
I wish I taught
very
photography class.
And well published.
Yes. And then you get all these other characters. Like, you don't talk to Kate that much in the first.
No, not at the beginning.
You can have one dialogue point with her.
Yeah,
that's about equal to everybody else.
Christian schoolgirl, Warren, who's this kind of nerdy kid who has a crush on you. Yep. But you eventually make your way to the bathroom, and while you're in a stall...
no, you're not in a stall.
Well, you're in
in the back.
Yeah, you're like trying to take a picture of a butterfly, like behind the stalls. Just to clarify. Sorry, Pete.
No, just like the whole game's obsession with butterflies. Like, could you be any more rote about the whole time travel thing? Like, my goodness.
I'm sorry they wear their influences on their sleeve. The butterfly effect is
a radical misrepresentation of how that stuff works, but I'll complain about that in a later episode.
That's fine. And also, it's got butterflies in it, and I know that displeases you also.
That does displease me, just in the abstract.
So, it's tough. It's tough. This game's tough on many levels for you. But when you're in the not stall, but in the back of the bathroom, two people come into the girls' bathroom. Nathan, who is...
not supposed to be there, because he is a man.
That is fair. One, he's not supposed to be there. Two, he is clearly off.
Distressed.
He's distressed and talking to himself and clearly an asshole.
Yes.
Like, immediately. They do a great job of just like, Nathan, your parents own this school. You could blow it up if you wanted to. I'm going to do this. You rock, Nathan.
Great pep talk.
Great pep talk. Takes a gun out.
You got this. Go, Nathan.
Second person enters the bathroom. It's an unknown character, unnamed at this point.
Yep.
A female, though, at
Nathan.
least this time.
Yep.
A woman in the bathroom, at least.
Mm-hmm. A girl with blue hair. And she barges in, seemingly, I guess, like, knows that Nathan walked in or maybe was following him or something. Confronts Nathan about some kind of money, drugs, trouble that they got into. Nathan pulls a gun on her and kills this girl. In sort of a scuffle that ensues, ends up, she gets shot.
An accidental discharge, most likely.
If you want to say it like that. This happening affects Max. And then she has another sort of blackout scenario, goes to this vision of this lighthouse, this storm, this tornado getting ready to destroy Arcadia Bay, then wakes up back in her classroom, in Mr. Jefferson's classroom, a la Groundhog Day kind of setup. Then she realizes after a while now that she can...
Two very different tones, though. Groundhog Day and Life is Strange.
Very, very different tones.
Very dissimilar in a lot of ways.
But until they give you the direct rewind, you kind of are stuck in a little bit of a Groundhog Day situation.
Yeah, you're on a loop. You start playing with your powers and find out that you can do these little micro rewinds. Like you drop your camera or something and you rewind and don't drop it, or you
look like an idiot in class, and then you say, well, rewind, I'll just answer the question correctly this time. That kind of stuff.
Yep, you start using your powers to make friends and influence people. And then you go to the bathroom, and you save this blue-haired girl by stopping Nathan, by breaking up the whole scuffle. And that just kind of sets the game off. From there, you can go to the principal and tell him that Nathan had a gun.
This is the first major.
The principal on your way out. Oh, so basically, you to get out of that situation, you turn on the fire alarm. So then you run it to the principal as you're going out of the bathroom, and you can either tell on him or not tell on him.
This is the first time the game gives you one of those major pivotal choices. There's a handful of these choices in each episode, and the first choice is Nathan and his gun that he brandishes in the girl's bathroom. You have the option to report Nathan or hide the truth.
So, did anyone hide the truth?
I'm a mandatory reporter.
That's fair.
I also reported Nathan.
I reported him, and then I went back in time just to see what would happen if I didn't report him, and then I went back to reporting him.
I did that for every single one of these choices.
Anyway, I can make Nathan's life worse. I was on board with.
Yeah, I totally rewinded. And I don't think I even explored the don't turn him in option. I was like, fuck that guy. He had a gun. Like, what? I'm not going to learn that not turning in the guy with a gun is the good choice.
But also, okay.
Like, the principal's just, come on, Maxine, be cool.
But Gino had told me before, I'm hearing myself, this is weird. Yeah. But you had told me before, like, don't rat on Nathan to the principal because it never worked. So I was like, oh, okay, so I guess I shouldn't rat on him. But then I was like, screw it, I'm going to rat on him because screw this guy.
Well,
God, what a narc.
I mean, it does. Even though you narc on him, the principal basically goes, I don't know. You sound like a snitch.
He's pretty rich.
He's pretty rich, and you sound like a snitch. So why don't you go fuck yourselfie? But then you kind of go out. Nathan is not happy with you because you snitched.
Quelle surprise.
And then you try to go back to your dorm. And Victoria she's not having it.
She's being an ass.
But for no good reason. Like, just let her into the dorm.
Because she's mean.
It's just a mean girl situation.
Yeah.
All over that thing.
You use your burgeoning superpowers to get petty revenge. By spilling paint on her.
You meet Samuel, the squirrel whisperer.
His voice creeps me out so much.
The janitor / poet.
Samuel just likes the squirrels. They're his spirit animal. What's your spirit animal, Max? I don't know, Samuel.
Can I just go to my dorm?
Can I go to my room? It's been a weird day for me. But you get petty revenge. You basically need to use your incredible rewind powers to, like, screw up, turn on a sprinkler, screw up a bucket, and then get Samuel to dump paint on Victoria by accident. So what happened? This is your second major pivot point. You can either dunk all over Victoria and take a picture of her and shit all over her, or you can feel bad and say, I'm sorry that happened to you. What did you do?
I comforted Victoria.
Me too.
Yeah, it was a personal growth moment. You know, Maxine grew as an individual by being nice to Victoria.
Yep, I was nice to Victoria as well. Though it was sad. That was one where I rewinded and went, let's see what happens if I dunk all over her. That's pretty satisfying. I guess I won't do that, though.
Yeah.
Seems like that'll come back to bite me. Get into your dorm.
But it also didn't really help you, either. It helped for, like she let you in the dorm. And then after that, it was not helpful.
Well, you know, you're a little bit closer now, you know? Maybe it'll pay off down the line, who knows?
By episode 2, I'm pretty sure she completely forgot about it.
We'll
also,
see.
you got that passive-aggressive text, like, by the way, this doesn't mean we're friends.
I looked at some of the butterfly effect trees for your choices.
Don't spoil.
I'm not spoiling anything,
Okay,
but I'm
just
saying
making sure.
that decision actually matters.
All the decisions actually matter.
Yeah,
which
they
is-
fucking
That's why
do.
like that's the point of the butterfly effect. Even if that doesn't make sense.
That's fine.
You're right.
You would say it made sense if it was like the kangaroo effect, some other animal.
I'd be more inclined to, but I'd still be angry about it.
So you get into your dorm, you go back, I think you go just straight back to your room, get some rest, check out your room and all your sweet posters. Your sweet not Catcher in the Rye poster that you have on your wall.
I was more impressed with that Final Fantasy: The Spirit Within poster.
Yes, this game is very published by Square Enix.
She even drops a line and was like, "That movie was so good, it was definitely cutting edge and worth all of the budget."
It was one of the best sci-fi movies ever made. Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within.
Like it's a completely different voice too.
I love the movie Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. It has a lot of great characters. Especially the chocobos. Yeah, that product placement was the most ham-fisted.
Spot on.
But it was great. I enjoyed it. It made me laugh, at least. The idea that this 18-year-old teen, who I think it's supposed to be like modern day, the idea that she has this, of all of her DVD collection, she has Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. Does a lot of character building work.
Just brief tangent. I was watching Casino Royale, like the Bond movie, this morning, and there's a scene where he's driving around Bermuda in a Ford Focus, and they zoom in like really big on the Ford badge, and I'm just like, why would Bond drive a Focus?
Because a lot of money got paid to the studio.
Do you know how many other fancier cars they had to destroy in that movie? Ford
That's
paid
true.
for
Maybe
that.
they couldn't afford anymore. Like,
They
just get a
couldn't
Focus.
afford
Stop
anymore.
it. Stop it.
So back to
Bond
Life
film
is
is
Strange. I think that they do a great job of making this environment seem like it has enough space that a grand narrative can take place, but it doesn't seem too big that you can't explore. So when you have the dorm room, the dorm situation, it's very accessible. The layout is easy to walk around and basically see everything. Same thing with the campus quads or the campus, like grounds. The campus seems large and a big narrative can take place here, but none of the places that you are put into are bigger than any kind of like little micro sandbox situation. I think that made the game super. What's the word that I'm looking for that will describe this? It's
explorable. Just make it neologism.
It's explorable because they gave you boundaries.
Yeah, they do a good job of chunking.
Yeah, it's all in very chunky, digestible pieces. So they don't make the entire campus everything. It's kind of a throwback, but if you guys remember the game Bully, like that game was also huge, but it was a full Grand Theft Auto style sandbox game. This game, because it's chunky the way it is, lends well to you being able to exhaust your options. You don't have to worry about like, oh shit, like it would take me 3 hours to explore everything that I could explore in this world at this particular moment in the game. With Life is Strange, they chunk out the environmental pieces so that if it's this part of the story, you can pretty easily exhaust all your options, feel comfortable moving on, so that when you're getting these story points, like when you're working with Victoria on the steps, you know that you can exhaust all the options around there. It's also pretty obvious what is and is not plot advancement. So it makes it really easy for you to get extra parts of the story before you do that pivotal turning point thing.
Yeah, and I think that just every room generally has maybe like 10 to 20 different things you can examine. Sometimes on the lower end if it's another character's room, but that number, even though it sounds high, the number of like lines of dialogue per thing is maybe 1 or 2 sentences. So it is pretty brisk getting through, and it all of the rooms are really dense with just like posters and photographs. Again, because they kind of use stereotypes, they do a good job of kind of capturing in the rooms this kind of microcosm of who these people are as people. Like when you get access to Victoria's room, there's a lot of pictures of herself in like nice looking clothes.
Of her selfie.
Yes. Oh, she
Get
likes
it?
selfies too. Sometimes
Just-
you need to love your selfie.
This is a pun Victoria makes on the steps before we dump paint on her. I don't think at any point have we explained why we're making this stupid joke over and over.
No, it's because it's just really good. I love the just go fuck your selfie and then the middle finger just right at you.
Right. Victoria don't mess around.
She doesn't. But when you get access to her room and some of the other rooms, like Kate's room, Dana's room, you kind of get a snapshot of who these people are really quickly. And Max might have the most nondescript room, or I guess it's the most nuanced room. Like, you've got a bunch of, like, this wall of selfie pictures that she's taken over the years. You've got this poster of, like, it's not the Catcher in the Rye, but it's like, you know...
It's the Catcher in the Rye.
The pitcher in the whole wheat. I don't know.
Pitcher's mitt, yeah.
Whatever it is.
Quick aside, did anybody else find Dana to be like the most compelling character on the Hall?
Was she the one who likes Warren? Which one, Shane?
No, she was the one who...
Oh, it's
She
Brooke.
was the one who had an unwanted pregnancy.
I don't think I talked to Dana.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh,
At least I don't think that
do you
came
have
up.
to advance
I
the
think
story?
to leave, you
don't
to.
have to. No, you.
Did I
it's
just gloss
completely
over this
optional.
whole memory?
Oh, wow. No, it's possible. I mean, when you're leaving the dorm after you go check out your room, you can go... There's two people on the hall having a fight. Dana and... I'm not sure who the second girl is. One sec.
I think it's Juliet, isn't it?
Oh, where
Yeah.
she locked the girl in her room?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I did that whole thing. I didn't. I guess
But there's
I
like a
missed
whole story
one
with her that
pregnancy
just
subplot.
you could completely miss.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can
Oh,
go in
man.
Dana's room, talk to her, and then... Because Max... So there's a little bit of a suspension of disbelief. Like, Max can just go up to these people's computers and, like, check all their emails and stuff and root through their garbage. Now, to be fair, when you do that, she has time travel power, so if you want to be stealthy, you can look through all their shit and rewind to before you did any of it, and then it becomes internally consistent. But the idea that
don't
these
have-
people are just not raising concern, that you're, like, going through their trash and stuff, is a little bit of suspension of disbelief.
I'm pretty sure
Or
Dana
just sitting
is
at-
the only person that says anything to her. Because she, like, if you pick up, because she has a pregnancy test somewhere in her room.
It's like on a little. It's on the floor in a little box.
Yeah, so if you look at it, she's like, you're being nosy, like, how dare you, just leave. But obviously you can rewind and not do that. But yeah, she's the only
You
one. 'cause
have
once
to
you go
have that
through-
experience.
Yeah. But once you
In
go
order to-
through, like, Kate's room, like, she doesn't even pay attention to you, and you go through, like, all of her stuff.
Yeah, which is a little bit weird, but you have time travel powers and suspension of disbelief. Billy, I saw that, like, pregnancy was in the air with Dana's story. Like, she's a cheerleader. She dates one of the football players. It's very clear from reading her emails.
So
and, like,
obviously she's pregnant. What?
no, I mean, it's clear from reading her emails. Like, he says,
They're
I was a
definitely,
total
they're
loser.
definitely doing it. I mean, like,
Yeah.
regardless of the outcome.
Like, some of his emails and, like, a crumpled up note from him make it clear that he was there was a pregnancy scare and that he was a total asshole about it.
I mean, at first I didn't read that into it. I thought it was just like, oh, he cheated on her, or something like that.
Oh, I immediately jumped to preggers.
Well, excuse
She
me.
was pregnant.
Did they?
She had an abortion.
Yeah.
Oh, I did not. I
She,
did
like,
not follow
straight up
that.
says that. She's like, I was pregnant.
Oh, I did
And then
not.
later, if you check up on her, you can talk to her about it, and she'll be kind of open about it and say that she sort of resolved things with that person. And then you can check her room later, and now she's on the pill. And, like, you can check up on her a lot. She is one of the most, like, developed characters in the first two, like, I guess, probably the most developed non-main story pivotal character.
Yeah, I totally got that out of the first conversation I had with her, but I did not realize that, like, I didn't find the pregnancy test, so I didn't. That whole line was not exposed to me. I was able
Also-
to glean most of it, which I guess is a testament to the game, that even though I didn't find the pivotal thing and had the pivotal dialogue, I was able to glean most of her story. Which is
Daniel
good.
gets developed a good little bit, too. He's,
Yeah.
like, a way minor character.
Daniel, the guy who's into sketches.
Yeah, he's way into sketching.
He can sketch you, and then he'll post it on his Facebook. His
and then
non-Facebook.
hopefully, sorry, it's his FB.
I missed that dialogue. I didn't have that conversation.
Yeah, after you're able to leave the dorm, you do also talk to Juliet, and Juliet, I guess, thought that Dana was cheating on her, but it's really Victoria playing mind games. She
thought
Victoria.
that she was sending her boyfriend nudes.
Yep.
Is what actually that means.
Yep. And then it turned out that Victoria was the one doing that.
Shocking.
But after you leave, you kind of get the run of the school for a hot second, and that's where you kind of have opportunities to talk to some of your classmates, like Brooke, who's into Warren, the nerdy dude who has a crush on you. You can talk to her about her drone, and she'll let you fly her drone if you say the right things.
Drone.
Yeah, I don't know. There's Justin, who's a skater, stoner guy, and if you talk about McTwists or something,
Those grinds.
He'll tell one of
Sick nollies.
He'll tell one of his friends to perform the trick, and then he will fail and hurt himself, and then you can take a picture of his loser friend on the ground.
Probably not a big twist.
If you tell him to do a nose grind, he does it successfully.
Oh, really? I had him do the other one.
Yeah, and he eats shit.
He eats shit, and I took a picture of him on the ground.
Where he belongs.
But yeah, you talk to you can talk to a bunch of the kids, advance different dialogues. The most important of them, as far as I'm concerned, is Alyssa. She has dyed pink hair, and she gets hit in the head with a football, and you can use your time rewinding powers to tell her to duck. You can use your powers to save her from minor embarrassment.
There's like 3 different instances of that
Embarrassment
happen.
is a finite resource. If she gets embarrassed, that's less embarrassment for you.
It's true. And I just... That running theme of Alyssa getting hit or not hit, I thought was a pretty good running joke in a game that does not have a lot of super lighthearted moments. It's a little bit of slapstick in a game that doesn't have a lot of slapstick.
That's true.
So you finally... What is the next pivot point? Is it...
It's intervening with Kate and David.
Yeah.
So a little bit later in the story, you get to see one of your first sort of character-to-character conflicts that sort of matter. The first one where you can either turn in David or not. So not David. Nathan or not, or you can help. You can help Victoria or not. That's sort of a single person. Do they like you or not? Here's where you kind of have to choose which person is going to be on your side. Which person are you going to side with? And it's between Kate, who is sort of the quiet, conservative, religious-focused classmate of yours, and David Madsen, who is the campus security head. And he's basically just like blowing up her spot, giving her a really hard time, and for something that Max doesn't really know about at this point in the game, you can choose to either just take a picture of them getting into an argument and David essentially bullying Kate, or you can step in and intervene and tell him to back off.
Yeah, what did everyone do?
Told him to back off.
Ditto.
I also intervened.
We all intervened.
Go
God,
us.
we're the best.
We're
Friendship.
such good people.
Yeah, she was in a bad way. Like, that guy was being a jerk.
Yeah.
But
And we had just dumped paint on Victoria and then like apologized. We had just grown as individuals, you know.
Makes sense.
That's who we are now.
So now we have to tell off an old guy.
Exactly. Natural progression.
Yep. And I did already, one of the teachers asks if you'll sign a petition to stop some security cameras from getting installed in the school. And so I already have signed a petition to say, fuck this guy's security program. So I was already against him in general.
P.S. I never had that conversation, and then later on I talked to her, and she was like, I was really upset you didn't sign my petition. I was like, I wasn't given that choice. I didn't know that was an option.
You got to seek out opportunity, Noelle.
I didn't
You
know
gotta
she
seize
was
life.
there.
Even when you can
kinda
rewind it, you got to seize it.
I do kind of wish that the game would have had a third option of you just missed it altogether. Because it's one thing if you make an active choice, another one if you make a passive choice. Because I feel like, and actually that's the only dialogue point that I miss in the whole game so far, was whether or not to sign the petition. And the game made a choice for me, Fuck you, game.
Inaction is a choice.
I was like, give me the petition. I'll sign it right now.
Too late. Cameras are up.
Change
it's
is
not
a contact.
Monday, so you can't sign.
Look, change is a contact sport. You need to get in there, make things happen, sign petitions about security cameras on the campus.
Got to break some eggs to make an omelet.
Are you guys like writing an inspirational book or something and just trying stuff out to see how it goes?
We're actually slowly pivoting the purpose of the podcast. It's going from game talk to motivational speeches, like slowly but surely.
Good job, guys.
Nailed it. So, after that, take it away. Next plot point.
The very next one, after either intervening or taking a photo with Kate and David, is you find out that this person that was in the bathroom, this blue-haired girl, is actually your childhood friend, Chloe Price. You had been good friends with this person growing up, BFFs, preteen buddies, and Max moves away to Seattle for 5 years.
There's
what's up?
Something in between that basically Nathan confronts you, and you're with Warren, and Warren
gets his ass beat.
And gets his ass beat. But Nathan comes up to you and he is extremely pissed off and basically threatens you. And then Chloe comes in and is like, get in the car. And then that happens. Sorry, just need to...
Yeah, no, you are correct in adding that as something that I did miss. You get taken to Chloe's house where you guys kind of reconnect, but she's a little bit salty because apparently you didn't contact her for 5 years. Just radio silence all the way.
And you've been back in town for like
a couple months.
Couple months, yeah.
So
bad friend. Bad.
We get into Chloe's room. We see that it's a very sort of new rock punk kind of alternative, rebel against the parents room.
She wrote on her walls. I mean, who does that?
Rebels.
Okay, so
rebels do that.
She's not getting her security deposit back.
She's got an ashtray. An ashtray.
Full of reefer cigarettes.
Reefers.
So we do have a conversation. We find out that security guard, that asshole security guard, is her stepdad.
Yep.
Bum, bum, bum.
Gross. Right? He barges into her room when you have, depending on how crafty you were, you could have been sneaky and hid, or you could have fucked it up. Yeah.
Hold on. There's a whole lot you're missing.
Okay, yeah, there is a lot, but
okay,
I'm trying to dance what's going on here.
You explore her room, and one thing that I at least found... Sorry, am I close enough?
Yeah. I found everything.
One thing that I found most interesting is you go... I don't know if you guys did this. You can go through her cabinet, her bathroom cabinet, and you see her pills, and I looked up what they were.
They're antidepressants?
Fluoxetine?
Oh, wow.
Fluoxetine.
Fluoxetine. Okay, yep.
So it's a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Yes, I have this on my phone right now. So it can treat depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, bulimia nervosa, and panic disorder. So I just thought that was interesting little tidbit and nod to mental health that I thought was important.
Sure.
Yeah, I didn't realize that they had actually used real brands of medication. I assumed that they took some fictional license, but that's cool of them. Again, well-researched game. You know all those games we talk about, remember Jade Empire when we were it wouldn't have taken that much?
Not well-researched.
Not well-researched.
To just not make up a vaguely Asian-sounding language.
Yes. This one, they are down to, specific medications in specific, cabinets that you don't even have to go in, and it's brand accurate.
But look, in Jade Empire's defense, there's a lot less kung fu in Life is Strange.
But no kung fu.
No, I mean Warren gets his ass beat, but I mean he fights.
Yep.
If there's something that I jump over that you want to talk about, please stop me. But I've explored every interactable in the game so far, with the exception of the petition. So
yeah.
No, that was just one point that I really wanted to talk about because I felt like it was a good nod to the kind of the...
You can also find out more things about David, that in his garage he set up these security cameras in his own house too.
Yeah.
And there's like a file
Yeah.
on Kate. That's all super, super weird. Like, that develops, but I guess we're just trying to look at some big plot points and some big decisions we have to make.
Yeah, and one thing I would say about the room, one, there's all these artifacts of the friendship that Chloe and Max had before she left, which it's years after she's been gone, and it's kind of indicative of how stuck Chloe has been. Or at least I took that as an emblem of how kind of stuck and oppressed Chloe has felt, that she still has all these trappings from her early teen years, like phones that she and Max decorated, and even like pictures and things that they had kind of done together,
and friendship bracelets that were unfinished.
Yeah.
And now you get introduced. You've been subtly introduced to this character the whole time, but it's one of the times that you really get introduced to Rachel Amber, who is an important character that is hinted at the very beginning of the game, but never really developed until this point.
Yeah, and there are posters that all over the school that say, like, she's missing, please call if you have any information. And you find out that Chloe was the person who was making all of these posters, putting them all throughout the school. And it kind of, it lets you know that there was they had some sort of deep connection.
Rachel had been sort of the replacement Max when Max left.
Yeah, and I thought it was pretty clear early on, like, that the relationship between Chloe and Rachel sounded, it danced between, like, romantic interest and friendship in a way that they did a good job of making it not 100% clear where the line was with Chloe and Rachel, but it seemed like it was ambiguous from Chloe's perspective, at least.
Yeah.
I honestly just assumed, as she was talking about her, that they were romantically involved.
Yeah. But she doesn't come out and say it, at least. So there's enough room. It seems like at least Chloe was infatuated with Rachel, and we don't really know Rachel's perspective because she's missing. But when you're talking, I think Chloe at one point says, "Can you put on some tunes so I can medicate?" And then she starts smoking weed. Smoking those reefer cigarettes.
Oh, man. I mean...
So when David busts in, he finds said grass.
Yeah. They're token up.
Token up.
I
And
haven't heard that expression in a while.
Well,
Welcome to
hip
Deep
like
Listens. We are nothing if not contemporary.
No, he says it.
Our slang goes deep, just like our insights.
so David confronts Chloe and says, "Hey, what's the deal with this weed?" And there's 4 options here. The first, it's actually 2 binaries that lead to then like a Punnett square of options. You know
what? I'm glad you used that metaphor. It really clarified what's going on here. 2 binaries that lead to a Punnett square. That's
exactly what happened. I mean, was I in any way misleading at all?
No.
Or did I 100% perfectly describe everything that's happened? Thanks, Pete.
Yep. So, our audience is exclusively people who remember high school biology. Gregor Mendel there's a huge overlap between our listeners and Gregor Mendel fans.
So you can either successfully hide or fail at hiding. If you successfully hide, you get to sort of see the scene play out with just Chloe and David. And if you fail at hiding, you get sort of brought into the confrontation.
Yeah,
then
you can jump
totally
out.
Yeah. Totally separate is when she's confronted about the weed. You can either let her take the fall for it because it is hers, or you can step in and either take the blame yourself or somehow shift things off of Chloe.
I gotta say that I tried to throw the weed out the window. That seemed like the right choice. Game didn't let me do that.
Game didn't let me do that.
You're not just gonna waste good drugs. Come on.
I mean, you can go out the window and get it later, but at least then there's not a reefer cigarette burning in the ashtray.
Yeah, there's just one burning in the yard.
They said like
set it on fire.
The game's reasoning was like,
He'll
you could throw it out
anyway.
the window, but you can't get rid of the smell.
That's
I mean,
a good point, too.
David specifically like held it right at her and was like, "Look at this thing in my hand that is incriminating you. Like, if you just tossed that shit out the window with your time travel powers, we possibly could have just, you know what? I lit a weird fart, man. Sorry."
I let it skunk in. It's fine.
Then he has to drive you to the hospital for your serious intestinal disorders.
I was just
But hey,
hoping,
we would have dodged that horrible reefer cigarette issue.
I just thought that maybe you could throw it out the window, and David's not that smart. He doesn't seem that smart, so maybe he wouldn't have been able to figure it out, but that's not a choice. So what did you guys end up doing? At first, I was stuck in the room. I couldn't find the hiding spot, and I let Chloe take the blame. And then I found the hiding spot and then made Chloe take the blame.
So basically, you did the same thing.
Well, one of them I wasn't even incriminated. It was like I wasn't even there, like a ninja.
Right. I also chose the option of staying hidden and not lying and saying that the weed was mine.
You guys are jerks.
Yeah, right?
I took the hit for Chloe, man.
Me too.
I didn't want to make... I felt like I had opportunity to cause the least damage to two relationships. So, like, if you admitted the weed was yours, you essentially damage your relationship with David, but you raise it with Chloe. That's kind of a break. Like, it's kind of a wash at that point, unless you super value Chloe more. But I just met this girl, so I mean, I don't know her.
Yeah.
And in, I guess, our defense, Chloe does some really weird shit in the next two chapters. So, like...
Yeah, I just thought... At first, he's the security guard of the school, so I thought that Max being, like, concerned about her work and concerned... She seems more involved in the day-to-day of school, and so I thought she might, you know, just try not to...
She has more to lose.
Yeah, she has stuff to lose. And also, Chloe getting busted for smoking weed in her damn room... Like, come on.
When she has an ashtray full of joints, like, on the desk on the other side.
Like, how did you not see this coming? How old are you? You've been living with this man for how long? You didn't know that, like, having fucking weed burning in your room wouldn't be a problem? I mean, the part where I started thinking I might have made the wrong choice was when you hide, it's not just that you don't take the blame. David hits Chloe.
Yeah.
For doing drugs, basically, and lying to him.
Yeah.
And that was when I was like, well, fuck, I might have made the wrong choice.
You could also go back in time, Gino. You could have corrected that, but you chose not to. Yeah, that's why you look away in shame.
See, if you intervene, you have to either blame Chloe for the weed and sort of throw her under the bus, or take the blame yourself. And I didn't want to make that choice, so I felt like her getting hit, while it made me upset, both in the game and out of the game, I suppose, I feel like I could have leveraged that against whoever might have been the bad guy later. So even though, like, I thought it's maybe like a necessary evil.
Yeah, there's these several moments where you can kind of be Machiavellian, where, like, you take a picture of Kate instead of intervening in Kate's favor, because ultimately you think that having the evidence will be more meaningful than intervening, or having the evidence that Chloe was hit is going to damage David worse down the line than intervening and having kind of played your cards that you were there. And so there were definitely several points where I thought the right thing to do is probably X, but I think given that I have time travel powers and I think that there's a larger scheme going on, maybe holding the evidence or kind of playing cards close to my chest might be the better way to play, or the better thing to do. But the game definitely makes you think long and hard about whether you want to stay in that closet, which I think is to its credit.
At the same time, they don't give you an option of getting evidence that David hit Chloe. It's not like, oh, you can take a picture now. So really, it's your word against his, which really worked well with Nathan and everything.
I was just gonna say, taking the photo would blow up your spot in the closet too. Like, there goes the hiding.
Oh.
Well, it's just a reefer cigarette smoke. He's not. That's what it is. It's not a flash.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, like, he's not. Whatever.
But also, I feel like he wouldn't. Like, if he then found you and you're like, oh, okay, well, I have a picture of you hitting your stepdaughter, I'd feel like he would then not bust you. I feel like that's good leverage to have on a person. Even if he finds you, it's like, okay, well, what you gonna do now?
Yeah, and don't you also find that one of his guns is missing from his gun?
Yes.
Yeah.
His gun rack.
You don't have to discover that.
Wait, do you guys not like figure it out then?
What?
That Chloe had the gun?
Yes, you can figure that out later, but you don't have to discover that in this scene.
Oh, okay.
That can potentially remain a mystery to the player, depending on your choices.
Well, if you save her, she tells you all about the gun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's got a gun now, and that one for David's characterization. This is kind of the big characterization moment for David early on. He's a soldier who's come back from, I think, Iraq. He's got PTSD
Afghanistan.
or Afghanistan. Maybe it was Afghanistan.
I thought
you're probably right. But he's got PTSD. He's pretty suspicious of just about everyone. And Joyce, Chloe's mom, was one of the only people who was really nice to him after he came back from the war. He's way too into his security job, and he's kind of incompetent at it. It seems like he thinks he's super competent, but he's actually not super great at it. But also, I had to say, like, for a military vet, gun safety, man.
Yeah, lock it up.
Lock it up. He's got like 7 or 8 different guns, and none of them are locked up.
It also doesn't make sense with his character because he personifies the paranoia that comes with PTSD, and you would think that locking up his guns would be the first thing he would do after, putting the cameras all around their house and the school and all that stuff.
Cameras everywhere, but not in his closet, not in his, like, dungeon.
Yeah, not in his garage. Why? That's, like, his place. That made no sense, but whatever.
I mean, I guess you don't put surveillance cameras in the room where you do the surveillance.
Yeah, I think it's
ideally, if he's in surveillance mode, he's there.
Surveilling.
Yeah, but
he
if
could turn his head.
In there, then wouldn't he want to know?
I mean, he's got to keep a low profile. It's just a garage.
That's fair.
If you put cameras looking at something, then something cool must be there.
Yes. So after you either have the Chloe situation happen or not, do you go to the 2 whales after that? I think it's the...
You don't do that yet. That's the end of
first...
chapter 1,
okay.
basically. Yeah. That's the last major decision of chapter 1.
Yeah, then you guys go to the lighthouse and you have the vision.
Okay.
And you see that weird snow.
Yeah.
So that's the end of... then what is immediately after David?
They go to the...
They go to the lighthouse.
Oh, okay. So that's just the end of episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, they go sit, they do the sunset at the lighthouse thing, they sort of catch back up, and there's this weird snowfall. Also, at this point, I think it's important to note, Max can tell some people about her powers. She tells Chloe, I think you have to tell Chloe about them here. I think there's no way to get around that. But you could choose, I think, to tell Warren at this time. I don't think you have to tell Warren, though. I think you can...
You choose, you can say, like, you can say, I have something to tell you, but you don't actually, even if you do say that, you don't complete telling him about your powers, because then Nathan comes in and beats his face.
Right.
You can try and tell him, but he gets his face punched long before you can get the words out.
Still,
you don't know how to fight.
There's a certain amount of, I guess, there's an option to have less people or more people know about your time travel powers. Chloe needs to know for plot reasons and stuff. But it's something that you also have control over, is who knows that you can do this time stuff or not.
Yep. And so the episode ends with that. That snowfall is significant because I think it's like summertime. Or
it's
fall.
October.
It's October, but it's way too early for snow. And it's like a beautiful sunny day, and there's like crazy snowfall. So clearly life is strange. Something's happening.
Game is hard.
Said it.
So we get the first episode end, right? When we start...
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Also, they make a lot of references to global warming and their effects on the weather. So,
that is
another plot point.
Climate change is the explanation, the de facto explanation until later on. So, episode
Spoiler
2.
alert. Jesus.
You start
episode 2. Go ahead, Gino.
You start in the diner, right? That's where you
start in the junkyard.
Oh, don't you? Okay.
You end in the junkyard. You start in her room, in the dorm.
Dang it! Oh yeah, you start in your.
You meet her at the
PJs.
diner.
You start in your PJs and
you gotta go take a shower.
You gotta go take a shower, and then someone tries to scribble a video about like a URL to Kate's video, because it comes out that Kate Marsh, there was a video of her at a Vortex Club party. So the Vortex Club is an elite club that all of the rich kids seem to be in, and they get to just go to fucking ragers.
Which, all right, we'll talk about that when the rager comes up.
Yes. They seem to go to ragers and do drugs and be rich, which it's just like all the stereotypes about preppy asshole high school kids.
It's like if you took Eyes Wide Shut and made it a high school party.
Yes, something like that. Though, to be fair, I went to a I don't know how many people here have experienced private school life. I think it might be everyone. Yeah. 3 out of 4?
Well, yeah, but I think all of our schools were very different from each other.
Yes, but I don't know. They were all very different from each other, but I think maybe it's not a universal private school experience, but I definitely know there were not necessarily official clubs like that, but there were certainly cliques that rolled like the Vortex Club.
Okay.
They like to make anagrams of their names in my high school.
Yep.
We were all dudes, so I mean, we didn't.
We were all chicks.
We were
so
also
we
all
didn't have good parties, I guess. I don't know how to describe it.
We were co-ed, so we had parties that ended poorly. We had a rule that had to come into effect because someone got so drunk that they needed to call an ambulance, and so a rule needed to be implemented that people who called ambulances wouldn't get expelled for drinking.
Always a good rule.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's not universal.
Yes.
Good job saving a life.
Yes, that's a good rule, but like...
but it shouldn't be necessary.
No, it shouldn't be necessary. And so the Vortex Club at least captured the like preppy, hyper-expensive upper class, like co-ed school, I thought. But the Vortex Club... where was I going with the Vortex Club? Oh, yes. Kate Marsh, who is like this Catholic. I think she's Catholic. She's very Christian.
Very, yeah.
I don't think it's a non-specific Christian.
Yeah, she's very Christian. She's very uptight. And it turns out she was invited to one of these parties. And apparently she made out with a bunch of dudes. And like there's a video of her doing it. Yep. And she's been really depressed ever since. And the video got published online.
There was a real link.
Oh, really?
If you follow the link that's on the mirror, it takes you to a real YouTube video that has been taken down.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Okay. That's commitment.
Yeah.
So it essentially says, like, this video has been removed by the uploader. Just like a real-ass YouTube video.
That's awesome. But you get the opportunity to kind of explore the dorm, and like after you take your morning shower, like someone writes the video. I think Victoria writes it in like lipstick on the mirror because she's the worst.
Yeah, she's the worst.
And then you can scribble it out. You can make.
I mean, she's so pretty and rich, but she's the worst.
Yeah, she does have cashmere
and a pixie haircut.
Yep. But then you kind of go about your business. You get dressed, get ready. You can talk to Kate and try to console her. You can get a little bit of info on Kate.
You can erase the message. Did you say that?
Yeah, you can erase the message on the mirror.
You can also, earlier in it, they have a message on her whiteboard that's outside of her room, which you can also erase because it's mean. It's like will do people for Jesus. I don't know. It's something really stupid like that.
Yep, it's stupid and petty and very high school. They really nailed high school shittiness, I thought.
They did.
It all seems very Degrassi to me. Like, they've taken as many possible tropes as they could and slammed them all into one thing, I guess.
They did.
I was thinking like somewhere between Degrassi and Skins.
I never watched Skins.
With like the guns and drugs. Because there was less guns and drugs in Degrassi.
Well, there was guns in Degrassi.
Yeah, but...
less drugs and less cursing.
Yeah.
There's definitely less cursing. But yeah, I started to get a little annoyed with it after a while, to be honest with you. That they just kept adding more and more things.
Life is Strange or Degrassi?
In Degrassi or in Life is Strange?
Both, really. But
well, at least Degrassi gave us Drake, and so that's a nice
true.
thing.
Net win.
Do you mean Aubrey Graham?
Yes, I do mean Aubrey Graham. So, you can go into Kate's room, and I think is that where you can talk to her about going to the cops or not going to the cops?
Yes.
About
This is the first pivotal choice in episode 2.
Yeah. So you go through a room, you can find a whole bunch of stuff. She's got a rabbit, which
Oh, he's so cute.
I like that. I like that a whole lot.
It's because he has a rabbit, guys. Just so you know.
It's fair, but it made me identify with Kate. Then you tell her, like, whatever happened at this party, you were clearly drugged. Like, and she'll ask you, should I go to the cops or not? What did people choose?
Yes, do it. Go to the cops.
No.
I chose to not go to the cops.
Yeah, I chose no, too.
I chose no.
Guys done fucked up.
We did.
No, I mean, I thought the reasoning was sound when I said it.
I thought the reasoning was sound, and this is another one of those moments where the right thing to do in a kind of objective way, if you're not taking in, if this was a real life situation and you had a friend who was drugged at a party,
if you're not
you would
proceeding
tell
by
them,
video game logic,
yes, you would tell them to go to the cops.
yes,
But you are operating in a town where, like, this rich kid owns the police department, and you don't have enough evidence, and
you just told the principal he had a gun, and nobody seemed that concerned about it.
Yes, exactly. And so the game kind of primes you to not trust institutional power and institutional controls. So I thought the right choice was say, no, we'll get them on our own. But she doesn't like that. She doesn't like that answer.
She's very upset. Also,
I think...
Understandably so.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Noelle.
I initially chose not to. I was like, you shouldn't go to the police. Mostly because as a sexual assault advocate who has been trained in such, I know the statistics to how many people actually go to jail for assaults and how often they go off and... they go off and don't get any repercussions. But then her reaction made me go back and change my answer because she seemed very upset.
So this is one of the shortest butterfly effect trees. Won't go into it now, but we'll circle back to this. This choice only impacts things in episode 2 exclusively.
Yeah.
So the very short-sighted ones, not getting to the major point about this decision tree, is like when you say, well, we'll look for more proof. There will be like different text messages from Kate later that day saying that, hey, like, you know, why didn't you back me up on this? Or hey, thanks for the advice. I went to the police. There will be different dialogue options that are available or unavailable to you later when she eventually, you know, calls you at some point. That's the next pivotal decision to make in the game.
I was really impressed with how the developers made Kate's depression physical in her room, just by
also in her appearance.
Yeah. But blocking out the light, showing in her Bible, you can actually go through some of the different verses that she's kind of highlighted, and you can see that she's starting to like read kind of more dark and fire and brimstone verses. You find, I think, some texts, either some emails or some letters from like relatives who are talking about her burning in hell.
And she stopped taking care of the room as well.
Yeah.
She covered up her mirror.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, there's a lot of big warning signs that something's really wrong. But you have to go hang out with Chloe. So you tell her whatever you tell her, and then you kind of leave.
Now, here's where you go to the diner.
Yes.
And...
2 whales?
2 whales.
2 whales?
4 dolphins.
That's how you know you're going in on the beat. Just shout out 2 whales.
Case go hard.
Here you get a bunch of other interactables. You get a chance to interact with another character that doesn't show up really until later. You get, and this one was kind of weird for me because when we got off the bus, the world was bigger now. So if you tried to walk somewhere, it would say like, "I do not want to go that way," and it would turn you around. So I wish it would have just given me some other reason why I shouldn't cross the sidewalk that way.
Just fire.
Just wall of fire, like in the Fire Temple of Ocarina of Time.
Yep.
You don't see it until you run into it, and you take 1/4 heart damage.
It would be a lot better game if she had a hook shot.
Oh man, right?
What?
So you enter the diner. Chloe's mom works at the diner. You get to chat up some of the locals. You get to have an interesting discussion with a homeless person if you choose to. Did either of you guys talk to the homeless person?
You're not talking about the fisherman, are you?
Behind the diner, there's a homeless woman. Did you guys talk to her?
I did. I rapped with the homeless lady. I thought it was a little weird, like, all the characters that you talk to, if they don't have a name, it just says, like, a indicator of what they are. So it's like the fisherman who's talking about the problems he's having fishing, it just says fisherman. But for the homeless person, it's just homeless. And I thought that, I'm like, that's a little blunt. But the homeless lady actually ends up being one of the more talkative people more talkative and supportive people you talk to. She's like, "You seem like a nice girl. You know, most people see past me, but thank you for talking to me. I needed this. I'll keep looking out." And is that also when you can tell her you had a vision about a tornado? Or is that another dialogue with the homeless lady?
Maybe later.
Spoiler alert. Jesus.
It's not that big a deal. That's no spoiler.
Turns out she has time travel powers too.
No way.
Right.
Learned about that until the last episode.
Homeless time travel powers.
Just
so
homeless also.
She didn't use it to win the lottery or anything like that. That's what a good person she is.
Or find a home.
Oh.
There's a word for using time manipulation for ill-gotten gains. I think it's called
thievery. I think it's called thievery, Billy.
Oh, it's called
Biff.
Bilking.
Bilking.
Biffitis.
Biffitis.
Bilking.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Bilking is a term. I mean, that's a term for stealing also, but
yeah, I think it's specifically used most commonly
discussions.
in time travel discussions. Anyway.
Great, good to know.
So you get to talk to Chloe's mom and get some more dialogue points. This is where you prove to Chloe that you have time manipulation. You do so by predicting a series of events in the diner. You have to nail them all like basically a QTE type thing, but instead you just choose the right dialogue options. And you prove to Chloe that you have time travel capabilities.
Using time travel powers as a cheap parlor trick is pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's going to knock down a cup.
You just wait.
This person's going to order flapjacks.
You've got 87 cents in your pocket because you showed me in the first cycle of time through here.
Yes, you've got a key. Oh, but what kind of key is it? A panda key. Yep.
So you get to hear some more points and exchange some words with Chloe's mom. Chloe comes into the restaurant and invites you to go visit one of her sort of hideout places where she goes to escape. Here's where we get to the junkyard scene. If you hadn't already figured it out, this is where Chloe tells you that she got a gun. And
or those of us who saved her already know that.
Yes.
Because we're good friends. But
exactly.
And to be fair, I explored every single dialogue option possible. So even if I chose the route where Max didn't know that she had a gun, I knew that she had a gun. Right. So I would do that all the time, was know that like there's 2 layers of what information is available in the game to Max and to me. Whatever. So anyway, I don't have much to say about the actual junkyard events until the very end of them, right?
Yeah,
but there's one cool thing that happens but there's one cool thing that happens, and it's a pretty important thing that happens in the junkyard, and it's missable, which is you can go to sort of the one side of the junkyard that's not as junky, and you can encounter a doe, and you you learn that the doe sort of scampers off, and you miss your opportunity to take a picture of it at the first time. And you say, you know what, that'd be a great opportunity for a picture, and your time travel powers don't work on that particular creature. It's the first time in the game that your time travel powers have essentially failed at something or didn't rewind time for you. So it's the first moment. You can also
find it later.
You can just walk up to it, and I did take the picture of it later, but if you maybe startle it again, then you have lost that picture. You can't rewind time on that doe.
Oh, that's kind of interesting, and it might be relevant. Perhaps. But, yeah, that doe and that whole area, I love. You can find Chloe's hideout and where her and Rachel kind of hung out.
Yeah.
There's some of, I think Rachel's stuff is still in there. There's a scribble on the wall like Chloe and Rachel were here. And then you can choose to scribble on the wall also. I chose not to because I thought that it was kind of a sacred place for those two, and I didn't want to intrude on it. But
me too.
I thought that that option, like having the option to write it, kind of shows where Max feels with Chloe. Like, we're close friends. Why am I being kept out of this? Like, why is Rachel now elevated above me? And you kind of get that jealousy factor.
Mm-hmm.
It's also
quick
pretty
question.
presumptuous of her at this point in their friendship, seeing as she hasn't talked to her in 5 years.
Yeah.
There's an option in the junkyard to write your name, where it says, like, Chloe was here.
Yeah,
Rachel was here. But, like, did you do it?
I just asked everyone if they did.
No,
Oh, shit.
literally just had this conversation.
Billy, you want to rewind. You want to rewind.
I do want to rewind.
That comment. But yeah, I said, me and Noelle said we didn't. Pete, you also said no? You did not?
I did not. Just because I don't
really?
believe in defacing caves.
I also did not. I was hoping somebody would.
No, I just thought that that was Rachel and
That was
Chloe's
their spot.
thing.
Yeah.
It's not Max's. Max has to make her own memories.
Mm-hmm.
Not just glom on to Rachel's.
Also, I don't know if we mentioned this yet, but she also left, like, almost directly after Chloe's dad passed away.
Yeah,
in a car
William.
accident. So that's also like a major dick move on Max's part.
Yeah, vanishing after the most significant personal moment in Chloe's life is extra rough. And it kind of explains why Chloe earlier on was not so wild, and you can kind of find evidence of her childhood throughout her house. And then it's clear that that moment of William dying is the moment where she kind of started getting rebellious.
Do we find out, I might have at some point, exactly why Max left? Like, was that the only reason?
Her parents moved to Seattle. Like, they got a job or something, and so they had to move. But she left with her family because she had to, and then just kind of didn't stay in touch. And she comes back to town just for school.
Yeah.
So you kind of have this moment, after you've got all the bottles, Chloe wants you to use your powers to predict where she should shoot bullets at the,
which doesn't make any sense.
at the bottles to, like, prove that you can keep her safe, I guess. So you use your powers again for parlor tricks to let her shoot bottles. But then after you shoot a couple of bottles, there's some opportunity to... She wants to do trick shots, like off of cars and stuff. And most of the different options for the trick shots can lead to Chloe dying.
Yeah.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
If
I
you
didn't get any
screw
of
up
those.
the trick shots, like one of them, you could tell her to shoot off the hood of the car, and it will ricochet back at her and kill her.
Yeah.
You can tell her to shoot the gas tank, and then the car will catch on fire, and I guess kill you both. But I didn't let that play out long enough to see what would happen.
It didn't kill either of them. It just
The game
kind of
just ends.
was on fire.
It was on fire?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't let it play out further than catching the car on fire. But there are a couple of opportunities where I think it's just the front of the car that she can shoot herself.
Yeah.
And that's real rough. But then you like shoot off the wheel, and then it ricochets 5 times and shoots a bottle, and that's real cool.
No, it just breaks the wheel, and then it knocks the car off, and then the car hits all the bottles.
There's another thing you can shoot off of that ricochets and shoots a bottle, though, right?
Yeah, that's in the first one when you ricochet it off like the old tire, just like the metal part.
Yeah. But I forget if there's an option where one of those trick shots, other than the car one that she shoots herself. But it's clear that Chloe is in danger constantly.
Yeah.
And then Frank shows up, right? Frank is next?
Yes.
So a drug dealer who Chloe
Frankie
owns...
Flowers.
Yes. Chloe owes money to Frankie Flowers.
Wait a second. We missed one important point.
Okay, go ahead.
We missed a pivotal choice, which was answering Kate's phone call or not.
Yes, and I answered Kate's phone call in the diner.
I also answered Kate's phone call.
Me too.
Everyone answered, because why would you not answer a girl who's depressed?
Yeah, and it's calling you for help.
Yeah.
Quite literally.
Though, Chloe, I think this is a good that is a good moment where Chloe kind of shows how kind of childish she can be about when she's going to be defensive. Like, you blowing her, quote-unquote blowing her off to just, like, spend 5 minutes talking to your friend who's, like, severely depressed. Chloe takes it as a slight, as, like, an example that you're not really friends with her. And I thought that kind of showed me that Chloe, all of these situations that you keep saving her from, are a lot of them are the result of her own making. They're the result of her own mistakes and her own kind of shortcomings. Not understanding, like, you can't be a good friend and kind of do that to someone. Not everyone can be 100% focused on you at all times.
But also, that shows a lot of her insecurities. Because most of her insecurities stem from people leaving her. Like, first her dad left her, obviously not on purpose, but he left her, then her best friend left her, and then her other best friend left her. And I think she has all these guards up to protect herself because she's had so many people hurt her in that way.
Yes. And so you kind of see you can understand why she is the way she is, but it's also clear how self-destructive those tendencies are as well. And so when you get to the junkyard and Frank kind of shows up, she owes him money. I think $5,000. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's big.
She took out a loan basically to fix her car so she could leave Arcadia Bay with Rachel to go to LA. That was their plan, but didn't work out. Rachel went missing, and so Frank's like, "Where's my money?" And he pulls a knife on Chloe. And Max pulls the gun on him. And then you can choose to either shoot Frank or not. What did people do?
Shot.
Yeah, I tried to shoot him.
Yeah, me too.
I did not try to shoot him. Regardless of what you do, if you try to shoot him, the gun is out of bullets.
Yeah, because you wasted all that on cans and trick shots.
Yep. If you do not... and he is, like, really... fucking pissed that you would have tried to shoot him.
You tried to murder him.
Yeah, he's not thrilled about that.
Why would he be upset? I don't see the problem.
To be fair, I would have probably stabbed someone if they tried to pull a gun on me. Frank handles it in stride a lot better than I thought he would.
Well, thug life. Frank Flowers.
But either way, he will take the gun from you. If you pull the trigger, he's like, yeah, if you're going to pull a gun on someone, you better try and use it. But you tried to shoot me. What the fuck? And
he doesn't take the gun from you.
No.
He doesn't if you...
No.
If you shoot him, he does not take the gun.
Oh.
Our gun. Mine.
You get to keep it.
I specifically said I don't want to shoot him, and then when not shooting him results in him getting the gun, I said I'm not letting that guy have a gun. I'm going to pull the trigger on him so that he doesn't take our gun.
I just wanted to kill him, man.
Just to watch him die.
That's it. That's all I wanted. I was like, Maxine's really taking a turn in her life today.
I am pretty anti-gun, so I was like, this seems like a bad course of action. If I had a choice to not pull the gun in the first place, I would have tried to dialogue him down, but that wasn't a choice. So I was like, fine, take the gun. I thought Chloe was more dangerous with a gun than a fucking drug dealer with a knife.
Maybe
Yeah, it
that's
might be
poor
true.
judgment.
Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. One of them has ended up has already shot herself in an alternate timeline where I stopped her from shooting herself. That was actually when she demonstrated that she would use a gun to just like shoot bottles and do trick shots. I was like, look, you're more likely to kill yourself with this fucking gun than this drug dealer is to kill you. I can protect you from the drug dealer.
Is it possible for Chloe to accidentally shoot herself?
Yeah, that's one of the trick shots that she screws up. She can shoot herself. I told you already. Again.
Come on, man.
Get with the game. Head in the game.
Game is hard.
So once you save her from Frank, or not really save her, Frank goes away and is like, give me my money next time we see each other. You have like a day or something. Some arbitrary amount of time that's scary.
Until Friday.
Until Friday. But pay me. But then Chloe and you kind of hang out by the train tracks, reconnecting as friends. And then Chloe...
like how friends do. Just hang out on train tracks.
Active train tracks.
The only place I hang out.
And Chloe gets her...
So linear.
Chloe gets her legs stuck in the train tracks, and then you have to save her again.
It's a huge pain in the ass, too.
Yeah, you need to, like, MacGyver some stuff. But this is where you find out that your powers, on top of being able to just rewind things, you can, like, as you rewind things, you can move in space, and, like, the different events will move backwards, but you stay where you are in physical space. So that lets you kind of move at super speed and get all this stuff done in way fast. I don't even know if you could save Chloe in the amount of time you have.
I don't think so.
It'd be tough. Maybe a speedrunner can, but I can't. Or I couldn't.
I see a lot of times they give you what looks like are options, but they're really the wrong options, and they force you to restart. But if you just know if you know the actual right answer, I think you can do it in one go.
Maybe, but you ultimately save Chloe. You don't derail the train; you just redirect it.
Or you can mess up the tracks.
Yeah, you have to mess up the tracks.
You don't have to.
No.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
you can just have the tracks change position, and the train is altered. The other one is you roll a barrel or something down the tracks and it fucks them up.
Oh, what? I just redirected the tracks.
No, what? I forget how you fuck them up, but there's a way where you can damage the tracks.
There's a big giant like truck wheel, like just the metal part, I think, and then you can roll that down and like mess up the tracks.
Yeah.
You can saw off Chloe's leg, too.
Holy crap.
It really changes the tension of the rest of the game.
They did that in Walking Dead already.
Get a new line, guys.
Yeah, man. Take it up with the developers. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you save her.
That's not a real choice.
You save Chloe.
That's not a real choice, guys.
Yes, you can't sew Chloe. You can't cut her leg off.
I tried, but the game wouldn't let me.
Well, I've got this axe. I guess
I'll just keep shooting it until...
Listen, Chloe.
Rewind, fast forward, rewind, fast forward.
Frank Flowers comes back with that knife, and he's like, I can help you guys out.
I got you.
Yeah, so you save her. She's even more indebted to you, and then you go back to school, and shit is popping off.
Shit is popping off.
I think, do you go to class? You go to class for a little bit, and then someone comes in and says someone's on a roof.
Yeah.
Well, before this happens, you see Mr. Jefferson?
Yeah, Mr. Jefferson.
You see Mr. Jefferson talking to Kate and basically not being supportive, and Kate gets really upset and runs away. And I tried to run after her, and she was like, just leave me alone. And I was like, okay,
I did too. I did everything
her.
I could to like block her path and be like, talk to me.
Yeah, same. You can put yourself in between her and the exit, and she's just not having it. She's a steam truck. But then class gets disrupted, and it turns out Kate's on a roof. She's on the roof of, I think, the boys' dormitory.
No, the girls.
It is the girls?
It's the girls' dorm.
Okay. And she jumps. And you see her fall in real time, and then Max uses her powers to try and rewind it, and then she jumps again, and then you rewind it, and she jumps again, and Eventually, Max just uses her powers and freezes time. Like, she finds out she can freeze the whole moment, and she uses that to get to the top of the roof before Kate jumps. Just in time to help. But when you get up there, her time travel powers stop working. She can't rewind anymore.
Yeah, she's out of juice.
Basically. Her nose is bleeding, like she's got a splitting headache, and she can't rewind anymore. At which point, you have one chance to save Kate.
Depending on some of your actions earlier in the game, there will be different dialogue options, some of which push Kate further towards the edge, some of which pull her towards safety more. Mm-hmm. So your choices now have gone from minor relationship impacts to who might like you or not to someone's life is in the balance.
Yeah. So what did you guys... I loved that dialogue, like pulling together all the different tidbits from her room, like trying to remind her of the people who seemed most important to her, like her sisters or her dad, reminding her of her favorite Bible verse, talking about like the different things you did to support her.
The biblical exegesis was a nice touch.
Yeah, and
so specifically, the choices that most impact what happens here is when Kate asks you if you should go to the police. If you say go to the police versus look for proof, different dialogue options appear, which will give you less right choices. I shouldn't say right or wrong, but depending on what your story play out is, they'll give you more choices that result in Kate's death or more choices that result in Kate living, and answering Kate's phone call gives you more choices in resulting in Kate's death and more choices in resulting in Kate's living. And also, there are some options that are presented to you that just have 4 options of like whatever, and you had to explore Kate's room to know what the right choices were. Like one of the options or one of the dialogue points say, hey, think about the people that are going to miss you when, if you do this, that you're going to leave behind. And it has like mom, dad, like brothers or sisters. And some of those people said terrible, terrible things to her in response to this. So if you say, think about your mom, and she's like, well, all right, yeah, my mom said that I was going to like burn in hell. Mm-hmm. Or I said, think about your sister. And she's like, oh yeah, like I do love my sister. They'd be devastated if I died this way.
Yeah, that's where my conversation ended. It was actually like, oh, think about your sisters, and then she came off and like came to me and like decided not to.
Yeah. So before we talk about the actual outcomes, Noelle, I was wondering what you thought of the scene in general. Just like, how did you think the depiction was of like that moment worked for you, or like kind of talking through this high impact scene?
I thought it was good. I think the fact that what you choose to say makes such an impact is very close to like in reality what would trigger someone in that type of situation. And I feel like it was really good that you could either focus on her relationships or herself in a way, like, because in some portions of it you could talk about like, no, people are gonna miss you, people love you, people care about you, I care about you, like we're friends, I'll do whatever for you. And then there's an option at one point that just says like you need to be strong or something like that. And I was like, yes, like it's important to talk about like all the people that love you and will miss you, but it's also important to empower the person and make them realize that their life is worth living without the other people's input, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that was definitely something I had trouble balancing throughout this scene, was think about other people and kind of coming up with what the motivators might be for her to come off the ledge. Like, there were moments where I thought revenge was something that might motivate her, like getting back at Nathan for what he did to her, or Victoria, and she did not respond to that. She actually will move closer to the edge when you bring up getting revenge, versus kind of personal empowerment, reminding her of her friends and family. That gets her off the ledge, which I navigated this poorly. I don't know about you guys, but she ended up jumping in my play.
Yeah, I couldn't save her.
I was able to save her.
Me too.
Yeah, so the game, I think, does a pretty dang good job of accounting for the loss of a major character or their presence. The scene after she either jumps or does not jump, you end up in the principal's office with David, Nathan, and Mr. Jefferson.
Yep.
And the principal takes a statement from you because you're the only other person on the roof. And you get a chance to basically point the finger at one of those three people. Did anyone not point the finger at fucking Nathan?
No, I definitely did.
Yep.
I pointed the finger at Nathan.
Yeah.
Screw you, Nathan.
Screw you, Nathan.
There's another option. Well, there's not another option, but there's a couple of options here. There's actually 6 to choose from. Hold on, let me see if I could get this right. There's 2 options and then 3 options, so there's 6 choices. It's you took the blame for the weed or not. That's one option, and then it's who you point the finger at. Because if you took the blame for the weed, David's gonna turn on you, and you're gonna get suspended.
Oh, wow.
From school for this.
Well,
Like-
also, I took the blame for the weed. I blame Nathan, but also, or did you say if you blame David? I'm sorry.
Hang on. If you point the finger at Nathan, you get suspended. If you point the finger at David, you get suspended.
So I pointed the finger at Nathan. I did take the heat for the weed, but I also said, like, this was Nathan's, like, Nathan had a gun, and I think that changed it so that...
Maybe, perhaps.
Because I didn't get suspended.
There is an option that just no one gets suspended, but you did get... Hang on, fuck. This is like the most complex series of...
Nathan got suspended in
three
mine,
choices.
and I did not, and they were kind of like, good job, you, because you saved a person's life.
Yeah,
Mhm.
mine was Nathan got suspended, I was fine, and everyone was like, you were the only person who had the courage to go up there. So even though you weren't able to save her, you did a good job.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah,
you tried
pretty
to do a good job, I guess.
Yep.
And that's how episode 2 ends.
But can we talk about that?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was really interesting because at first when I got into the room, I didn't understand why Mr. Jefferson was really there. Because I was like, why can you blame him? Like, he didn't really do anything. But then it's like he's also a bystander that didn't take the steps he could have taken to better her situation. And I thought that was a really important person to put in the room as someone to blame, because you don't usually think of the bystander as someone to blame, even though that just being a bystander and not believing that person and not being there for them can elevate someone's depression and their I guess self-harm tendencies.
It kind of
so
makes
much more.
sense story-wise, because if you... Among the myriad of dialogue options, the principal will point towards someone's failure to do something responsible. He might point towards Nathan's failure to responsibly run a party that leads to the events occurring altogether. He might point to David's irresponsibility for leaving the roof access door unlocked, saying, you're supposed to be the security guard. You should have this shit on lockdown. He might point towards Jefferson and say, this student interacted with you in the most intimate way, or you had the most intimate relations with this student from like a proper teacher-student scenario. You should have seen these signs and been able to report these to us at some point. So just as dangerous as it is to host an irresponsible party, that is an occasion for something dangerous to occur, or be irresponsible with your security duties, so also it is irresponsible to see someone in the state of mental distress and do nothing about it or not handle it appropriately.
And also just completely blame her in the conversation that he has with Max. He's just like, what if she
True.
brought this upon herself? And in reality, when someone is that depressed and that down on themselves, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, victim blaming is not really it's not. It doesn't lead to good outcomes for anyone.
Now, hang on. I didn't quite take it at, like, I could see how it might be taken as victim blaming, but the way his phrasing hit me was, she seems to be very, very defensive about it, and if people ask her for details, she doesn't give details. And Kate's story combats that accusation by saying, I don't remember, it's all fuzzy to me. I just remember I woke up in a place and I was compromised. Right? So we're made to be confused about it, but there is at least like plausible deniability here that like Jefferson might have had a reason to suspect maybe Kate knows something and she isn't telling us something, and that could justify him in trying to press her.
Sure, but the problem is, her story is not that she just doesn't remember. Her story was that she was drugged and can't remember.
Right.
And also, sorry.
Go ahead.
Also, when it comes to traumatic events like that, like being raped, people don't remember it in the way that a lot of people think it should be remembered, in kind of like a situational, like, this is what happened and then this and then this and then this. You get like sparks of memories that you can't put into a chronological order. So, and also asking a person that has been sexually assaulted, that probably has some level of PTSD from it, to recount their experience only furthers their distress.
Yeah, and especially the timeline of these events is that party happened like a week ago. It was really close in terms of time. So the idea that she should be in a state where she should be able to comfortably articulate what happened, I think is just not. Everyone in that school, if this was a real situation, fucked up badly, because she should have been in a counselor's office. She should have been in a program looking after her. She should have been shown to the police immediately. It shouldn't have been a choice. Like, they should have reported it as soon as that video was apparent. The police should have been involved. Like, very clearly, everyone in that room was at fault, except for Max, basically, because Max is a student, and ultimately she doesn't have that much power, and she used whatever powers she did have to try and help. But even the principal, like, everyone in the school seems to have known that video existed, and anyone who did not act to help Kate screwed up, basically. And that's kind of why Jefferson is someone you can point the finger at. But that was a heck of an ending of the episode, and then there's an eclipse that blocks out the sun.
Another weird, unnatural nature event that should not be happening.
And it's, I gotta say, the different licensed songs that they use at the end of these episodes and on jukeboxes here and there, I thought do a really good job of setting the tone of the game. And again, episode 2, I ended that episode like right before I went to bed, and I was like, well, I guess I'm gonna be sad today. Guess I'm going to be real sad. And I guess they also did a really good job of kind of giving Max power and then showing that it could be fallible, which then kind of plays into your calculus going forward. Like, by giving you this ultimate power and then stripping it away, it changes your interpretation of events going forward.
Or suggesting that there's some sort of potential damage to Max in using this power. I think that's really the first nosebleed, the first time we see that this might be hurting her as well.
It might be a gift and a curse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a Spider-Man situation.
With great power comes great nosebleeds.
Yes. That was... well, is there any other big things that you guys want to hit on for episodes 1 and 2?
I don't have anything right now. I know that this is going to be where our podcast discussion on this game takes a big turn, because the outcome of Kate's life takes major impact in the next 3 chapters of the game. So the fact that 2 people's playthroughs had Kate die and 2 people's playthroughs had Kate live, we're now going to have a pretty cool, diverse set of experiences next time.
Wait, can I ask people who didn't save her, What Bible verse did you choose that she reacted negatively to?
I chose the one about vengeance.
I think I finished, you know.
Oh, I think it was, yeah, because one of them, there were two verses. One of them was about basically the wrath of God, and the other
It was,
about...
there was Matthew and then there was Proverbs.
Yeah.
So Proverbs was God will call you for comfort.
I didn't have to choose a Bible verse.
Yeah, me neither, but
we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the Matthew one then?
The Matthew must have been the vengeance one then, because the
Yeah.
Proverbs was God will call the weary for comfort or something along those lines, which I picked. Obviously not the right call in this situation.
Matthew, I thought was the right call. I didn't pick Matthew. I picked. Oh, maybe I should have picked Matthew. I don't know which, because I didn't remember which. It just says Matthew or Proverbs.
Yeah.
It doesn't spell out.
There
what
were
those
some
are.
options that both were the wrong one, and it didn't matter.
Yeah, we might have been too far gone at that point.
But
yeah.
For Proverb, I think Matthew's her favorite verse. Proverbs is the one called for comfort.
Yeah, Proverbs like God will call you to comfort.
I think Proverbs is her favorite verse. I just didn't pick it because I thought that was the one that God calls you for comfort, the weird for comfort. I thought that might be interpreted as a call to suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't remember what either were at that point, and I was just like, well, Proverbs is usually pretty
solid,
pretty chock full of wisdom.
Yeah,
but
I thought, hey, get revenge on Nathan. God will have his the wicked will be shown justice. And she was like, I don't care about justice anymore. And then she jumped, and I was like, oh, well, fuck. I goofed.
No, because I was interested, because when you look at her Bible, she has, I'm guessing, those two verses, and one of the verses is all scribbled out, and one of the verses is not scribbled out, and she scribbled out the ones about vengeance, and she left the one about calling the weary, and I thought that she did that after she was really depressed, and now she saw that as her kind of sanctuary. Yeah,
her out.
Yeah, that was my interpretation as well, and that's why I thought the vengeance one was the right call. But I think that they do a good job of making things ambiguous enough that you feel real anxiety in that scene, as long as you're emotionally invested.
Yeah.
And it was after this moment, after she jumped, that I noticed here's the helpline if this game brings up anything for you. It happened, I think, on like the loading screen for episode 3. That was kind of the ticker at the bottom of the page. Which, man, I think this game, it's, at least so far, let's just go, like, final thoughts for episodes 1 and 2. Like, what are you looking forward to in episode 3? What do you think, for the people who have not finished the game, what do you think is going to happen? And let's sign off.
Okay.
So, Pete, why don't you and me just go quick, because we don't have predictions to make.
Okay. You want to start, or you want me to?
You can go first.
All right. So I like that this game is tackling some sensitive issues, and I think it's doing it with a lot of tact, a lot of sort of research in the way we might have been discussing. Like I said, I think my only problem with it is that they're trying to do so much that maybe they're potentially spreading themselves thin in certain areas that could use greater attention. Like I said, I think it's the Degrassi dilemma, where like you're trying to address a lot of heavy issues, a lot of things that impact, teenagers specifically, and you just can't do justice to all of them. Yeah,
and I would echo that a little bit, though I feel they're a little bit more successful. I think they are tackling a lot of heavy issues, and I think the central conceit of this game, the time travel power, I think they do a great job of just kind of making that power stay interesting and making you really think what is the right choice, and making you think that regardless of which choice you pick, you could have made the right one or you could have made the wrong one. And it's hard in games to have this sense of gray, especially since eventually these different narrative webs have to end. One of the ways that kind of Telltale games get around it is by kind of having the impact be visible via deaths. In The Walking Dead, if you screw up enough or if you do enough things, people just end up dead, and that's how you know that your choices had weight. And in Life is Strange, outside of the Kate situation, I don't know that early on every single decision is life or death. It can just be quality of life. It can be the conversations that you have. It can be how many friends you end up with. And those are enough to feel weighty. And I think that's a difficult thing to balance. And I really enjoy how they did it. Because, like, when we played Until Dawn, I remember we had a conversation, Billy, about how the choices didn't feel like they did anything. Or they felt like they did too much. A lot of characters either dying or not dying depending on the choices you made, or just kind of having different dialogue with people. But this game, by making it clear early on that not every choice will be life or death, there will be some that are just about teenage drama and how you will navigate it. It made the world feel a lot more realistic to me, and it made me a lot more invested in the choices. Instead of just kind of eating popcorn and just saying, what will happen to the puppets if I do this? It was a lot more, what should I do? What is the actual right choice here? How should I interpret these characters and their motives? And what would Max say? A lot more than kind of the theater-going, just kind of action movie ride that some of these other dialogue-driven games can feel like. And I'm really impressed with it so far. Episode 2, the ending, I thought, like you said, Pete, it's something that most games don't even approach. And to approach it with this much earnestness and also seriousness and understanding the gravity of the situation, I think is impressive, especially with not having a lot of examples to go off of. It was really well researched, and I was impressed. Okay, that's my two pieces.
2 pieces of
2
what?
cents. 2 cents. 2 bits.
2 bits.
So the things that I have enjoyed so far are the minor dialogue points where I make a good choice or I decide to explore and I am rewarded with choice. I did look up a couple of spoiler things that I won't spoil here now, but the things that I looked up were for some of the most minor characters and how if you actually go out of your way to talk to them, how that might impact later chapters. And based on what I've seen so far, it makes me excited to look for the things that maybe I haven't spoiled for myself yet. Small example is that character Daniel who does the sketches. I sort of looked at every single possible option because that character just kind of interested me. I thought he was an interesting character, so I just looked up all of his dialogue options. There's not that many. He doesn't have huge impacts in the game, but it can make some of your choices that you might want to make later in the game easier or slightly harder. So he does have some relevance, but those very missable, very optional conversations with a minor character can still hold weight if you are trying to make one outcome or another manifest in the story. That's something that I have enjoyed so far and that I look forward to more. Since I have only played, I finished episode 2 and I'm like a good bit ways into episode 3. Most of the game that we haven't discussed is still going to be completely foreign to me. And so some of my, I guess, predictions, I think that if there's going to be an ultimate villain, I think that it is probably going to be one of the 5 people that were in the principal's office there. Because I think just from like a story perspective, essentially like, what do you call, like Chekhov's gun type thing, you're going to line up 5 people as potential causes of all the problems, and I'm including Max here as well. I don't have enough evidence or inclination to narrow it down, but I think it's probably
office.
Yes. The Chekhov's principal's office. I think it's going to end up being. I think that it's going to end up being one of these people. Actually, I could probably make more narrowed down predictions. I think that either Nathan or David is going to end up being like a secret good guy in the end. And then I think either Jefferson or Principal is probably going to have something really fucked up revealed about them. And then this totally doesn't involve the whole Max is there and she could potentially be a villain too. We're not quite sure.
Okay, cool. Noelle?
I'm also enjoying it. I enjoy how they kind of what Gino and Pete were saying, that they really go into these very important, very big issues that are very hard to get right and extremely hard to put into a game and make it a game that people want to play, because they're so heavy and they're so uncomfortable, and they do it so easily. Like, even like the abortion and the drug problems that are clearly going on and all of that kind of smaller stuff that isn't as in your face as the depression and the potential suicide, they handle it so well, and they handle it
so I mean, are you trying to say, like, they don't make a big deal out of it?
They don't. Yeah, they don't make a big deal out of the fact that this girl had an abortion. They don't.
It's just matter of fact.
Yeah, it's just like, this is what happened, and there's no judgment here. And the fact that they show Nathan as, like, a huge villain, but they also show that he's clearly going through something that makes it not him, like, more sympathetic, but it intrigues the character. It makes it deeper than just, oh, he's a villain. It's like, oh, he's a villain, but there's clearly something wrong with him. And what else?
Yeah, and I think with Victoria too, even though she's a huge jerk, when you then apologize to her about the cashmere, she will open up to you and be like, oh, well, maybe we don't have to be jerks to each other.
But also then you see her after Kate tries to commit suicide and she's crying. And it's like they kind of she sees the weight of her decisions. I don't know how much she sees it past that moment, but she recognizes her own faults in that experience and what happened there. I think they also, when it comes to options that Max can do after learning about the assault of both Chloe and, which I don't think we went into at all.
Oh, we didn't, yeah.
But basically it's alluded to that Chloe was probably assaulted by Nathan also. So that both the assaults of Chloe and Kate, you see the options of, it's not your fault. And I think that's an extremely important message to get out there to people that have gone through that. It's so important, and it's not as talked about as it should be, and it's a lot of victim blaming happens in that avenue. And it's good that this video game doesn't really give you much of a choice to victim blame. I thought that was a really good snippet. And when it comes to what might happen next, I don't really want to make predictions. I know something because Gino told me. Spoiler.
That's fair.
But I would rather just see what happens. I think that, yeah, Mr. Jefferson something's gonna come out about him. But aside from that, I just kind of want to enjoy the ride.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to be fair, I said that stuff before I knew Noelle would be on. I didn't think Noelle would have the ability to play the game at all. So I was like just talking it out because we were just talking it out, and that's why I spoiled it. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But I'm looking forward to the discussion for episode 3 in particular. 3 and 5, I have a lot of. Actually, you know what? All 3 episodes have things that I definitely want to talk about.
Screw it.
I mean,
but like 3 has some big stuff for me personally, I would say. And 5, I think there's a lot of thematic stuff that comes together in 5. But with that, I think we're done with our first podcast of Life is Strange.
Definitely a 2-part.
Yes,
this game's got a lot going on.
Yes.
There's layers to this.
this onion, this ogre. There's layers to this ogre. Remember, you can get in touch with the show at deeplistenspod, deeplistens.libsyn.com, or deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. Please send in your feedback. We love feedback. Please, I haven't said this in a while, but we are on iTunes. Please rate and review on iTunes if you like this show. Or if you use a podcasting service that I don't know about, we're probably on it, and they probably allow you to review things. Do that. I can't authoritatively say that it exists, like a review system for whatever you're using right now, but find it if you can.
I mean, even if you just want to project your review into the night sky, like, we'd appreciate that as well.
Yeah,
but do both.
Hit pause, go outside, and just scream, Deep Listens is a good show, people should listen to it. And then
to the heavens.
We'll know.
Deeply.
We'll feel it.
Listen to it.
We'll know. Thank you, Billy.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I look forward to seeing what this game has to offer. I always love playing more of these visual novel style games because I think that this challenges what games can become and what games have been in the past. So I'm always happy to play games like this. Always happy to have intellectual discussions like this with you fine people. So I'm excited for part 2 of this Life is Strange ride.
Thank you, Pete.
Always a pleasure. If one day in the future print media does die entirely, it's nice to see that we'll still have good, complex storytelling in the world.
And thank you, Noelle, for guesting.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is, well, I wouldn't say fun, given the conversation topic, but I enjoyed having a nice intellectual conversation about this very important and interesting video game, which is actually, fun fact, the first video game I'm playing completely through by myself. So,
okay.
Woohoo.
Nailing it. Got moments of personal growth. Just like Max.
Just like Max.
There you go.
We're basically twins.
Basically twins. All right. Thank you, listeners. Till next time. Peace.